Hey, what's up? It's Mecha. So the other day while I was binging lore videos for a game I've never played, I had the startling realization that I haven't made a video about Yu Yu Hakusho yet. What is a Yu Yu Hakusho, you might ask? I don't know. It's a good anime though, and it was actually one of the first anime I ever got into thanks to Toonami airing it before my bedtime. I'll even go as far as to say it was one of the best anime I've ever seen. It struck the perfect balance between story, action, character development, and even comedy. At least in my opinion anyway.
For a quick recap, the main character of the show is Yusuke Urameshi, your average teenage delinquent who shares a common trait with most humans, being weak to cars.
Ooh!
Well, as it turns out, he was never supposed to die that day, and the child he was trying to save by diving in front of that car wouldn't have been killed anyway, making Yusuke's death completely useless. This sets off a chain of events that leads Yusuke to eventually getting his body back through interventions from a Grim Reaper named Botan, along with Yusuke's crush Keiko, and his rival/best character in all of anime, Kuwabara. This is all followed up with Yusuke becoming a detective for the spirit world, which has him dealing with many paranormal cases given to him by Koenma, the son of King Enma. You know, the ruler of the spirit world. Along the way, Yusuke runs into a couple recurring characters like Hiei, a fun-sized fire demon with a bad attitude, and Kurama, an unreasonably handsome demon fox living in a human body, both of which eventually start working with our spirit detective on his cases. There are a few more important characters in the show, but I'll cover them as we see them in the games. Speaking of the topic of this video, that's the topic of this video. During the time Yu Yu Hakusho started airing in 2001, we received 3 licensed games here in the US. Which is typically what happens anytime something is popular and a company wants to make a bit more bank. This usually means some random company has to crap out yet another mediocre game. And this has been the case with basically anything popular ever. Not all tie-in games are bad, however. Take the Scott Pilgrim game for instance. It's got the music, the art, the gameplay. It's a wonderful little game. Although I'm not so sure this will be the case with these guys. They look a little rough. Oh shit, is that a knife? Yu Yu Hakusho's Spirit Detective for the Game Boy Advance released on December 2nd, 2003 and was published by Atari and developed by Sensory Sweep Studios, known for such classics as Marvel Nemesis Rise of the Imperfects for the DS, Need for Speed Most Wanted for the DS, Jackass the Game for the you know what, you get the point, and for not paying their employees. They also did a ton of other handheld ports and licensed games along with these language coach games. I actually own the Japanese coach game, and when you know it, I still can't read.
I just like to look at the pictures. With this game being the first game that Sensory Sweep ever developed, I'm absolutely certain it oozes quality. Just pouring out the seams even. Actually, I kind of feel like I need to go wash my hands.
Watch out, kid!
They say what you do in life is reflected in the afterlife. For Yusuke Urameshi, it's both a blessing and a curse. Yu Yu Hakusho. All new episodes next. Only toonami.
Spirit Detective greets us with a static title screen with the most generic peppy music I've ever heard. Makes you feel like you're about to step into the shoes of a delinquent spirit detective, huh? I want to start calling this type of music pep stank. It just feels appropriate. After that, there's a few more static menu screens, and then we finally start the game. Or rather, the Yu Yu Hakusho logo gives us a brief summary of our main character over a horribly low-res shot of the town he lives in. I hope you really like seeing low-res scenery, because this is how the game primarily handles its dialogue. We do get a few different places to look at, but none of them look particularly great. I do have to give this game props for actually having a story, though. My main gripe with the other licensed GBA games I've reviewed has been the lack of any sort of explanation to what's going on. Although this doesn't mean that the story is perfect by any means, because throughout the game some details are left out and even some characters and plot devices aren't giving proper introductions or explanations, which isn't a big deal if you're familiar with the show, but it's a bit silly when you know what's actually supposed to be happening. So after we're nagged at to go to school by our mom, we leave the house and immediately get into a fight. No wonder Yusuke doesn't like to go to school. His whole neighborhood's a free-for-all. Our only objective at this point is to find Kuwabara, who's waiting patiently outside our apartment complex for his daily beating. Once we oblige him, our next objective is to go find the little boy? I mean, we've all seen this show, right? We know what this means. Alright, got his beating out of the way, and now it's time to get killed by a car. Wait.
God damn it.
And it's just so funny to me that it specifically says to go find the boy. It could have just as well said to go to the school and have this happen along the way, but nope. It's time to die, Yusuke. After we're done dying, we're offered a second chance at life so long as our body stays intact. So, in order to make sure we don't get cremated, Yusuke possesses Kuwabara in order to tell Keiko to keep him safe. After which we go to collect Kuwabara's homework from around town, because they needed to make this game arbitrarily longer for some reason. And unless this was like a take-home quiz, I don't see how turning in your homework equals a better test score. Do you not absorb the knowledge until the homework is handed in? That's where I messed up. We're then allowed to play as Keiko, and I guess this is a really rough part of town because even she's in danger from these thugs. We make it to Yusuke's apartment, and it's currently being burned down thanks to your friendly neighborhood arsonist. He took being a fireman a little too literally, what can I say?
My house is on fire!
Anyway, we rush inside, and instead of this being the end of the mission, we're forced to traverse this hell maze that Yusuke's apartment has turned into for some reason. The game continues to loosely follow the plot of the anime after that, with Yusuke being tasked with finding 3 relics. We fight some guys, beat this dude, talk to Kurama, fight some more guys, put Hiei in timeout, you know, the usual stuff. Up until you get to Genkai's place. She's a small old lady with a ton of fighting experience that later becomes Yusuke's master, but before that happens, we get to play some of the worst minigames you can imagine. There's mash the button, cheating at rock, paper, scissors, and whatever this is. Terrible rock band? A bad Friday Night Funkin' mod? Who knows? Either way, I hated it, but other than this small section, the rest of the gameplay hardly ever changes. As you could probably tell, the gameplay is that of a simple beat-em-up style game set on an isometric view of the world. Well, sometimes it's isometric, other times it's just a normal top-down perspective, and sometimes they'll even mix the two together in order to make you feel uncomfortable. And while it is a beat-em-up, it really just boils down to mash the attack button until your enemy dies, or explodes? I never really questioned why that happened. There are some special moves you can unlock by leveling up, because of course this game needed RPG elements. Most of them are alright, but I only really used the range attacks so that enemies couldn't mob up on me and put me in stunlock hell. If I had to describe the graphics, I would say the game looks like classic Fallout. You know, if the art budget was 12 pennies. I swear, it's so hard to actually tell what you're looking at sometimes. There were so many instances where I thought I was about to walk onto a pathway just for it to be a wall or find out it's not at the same height as me. And while we're on that subject, let's talk about the maps themselves, especially this first area. So for some reason, they decided to lay this city out like a maze, with many buildings boxing you in as you try to make your way around town. This wouldn't be as much of a problem if they gave you a map, but the best you have is a compass that points directly to where you need to go, but not the path you should take to get there. This means you are absolutely gonna run into all the dead ends on your way to the objective. The map also has no right being as big as it is. There were times while I was running around where I found myself in these huge areas of just nothing, where I thought I had entered the void or something. Not that there's anything to find around town besides the things you're told to collect, which makes you wonder why they let you run around the entire map in the first place. Enemies and cars don't even spawn outside the areas the devs thought you might run for the story. Speaking of enemies, there's nothing really special about them. They just chase you around and do basic attacks. So what I like to do was run around and gather the biggest group of friends as possible. And because the first map is so huge, you're able to kite so many enemies that the game starts to drop frames. And that was the most fun I had in my entirety of playing this game. And I 100%ed it. With that being said, the game ends after your first fight with the Toguro brothers to save Yukina. Not that you would know Toguro had a brother, because only the younger brother gets dialogue. Anyway, this at least means the game covers a fairly large section of the anime, including the fight with Rando and the 4 Saint Beasts, which would be a lot cooler if any of it was fun to play. Other than having Yu Yu Hakusho plastered on the front, there's really nothing here to set this game apart from any other generic beat-em-up out there. Except, you know, those are probably a lot more enjoyable. Being able to switch characters was neat, but other than being forced to use them against certain bosses, I always defaulted to Yusuke. You know, because gun. There is a bit of post-game content after the main story. You access it through the newly unlocked extras menu. It's just a boss rush in the same area you fought Toguro in, but you get to play as Genkai, and you'll never guess what your reward is for completing this. Oh, it's just a mini game room again. 1 out of 5, next game.
In case you didn't know, I happen to be a spirit detective. Very good!
Where is his energy coming from?
Okay, now I'm pissed. What do we do now?
Now we leave it to me.
Yu Yu Hakusho Tournament Tactics, also for the GBA, is a sequel to That Guy, and released on November 18th, 2004. Also developed by Sensory Sweep. Like the name implies, this is a tactics-style game, which are typically top-down, turn-based RPGs where you control a small squad of characters to complete objectives. So games like Final Fantasy Tactics, the Good Front missions, and Fire Emblem are popular examples of this style of gameplay, which is interesting considering that this game covers the Dark Tournament arc of the anime, which mostly consisted of one-on-one fights. not unlike something you'd see in a fighting game, for example. But you'd have to be pretty brave or have a history in fighting games to develop one for the GBA, so I think Sensory Sweep made the right call there. Like I mentioned before, this game is a direct sequel to the first GBA game made by the same developers, and right off the bat we can see they've upgraded from static menus to slightly more than static menus. Incredible! And they even gave us a budget version of the anime's opening. What a time to be alive. The game starts with the logo spouting Lourdes like in their first game, but this time it's all about the Dark Tournament and how it's run by evil rich humans who have demons fight for their entertainment. Then follows it up by letting us know that the Toguro brothers are still alive. Yusuke is then confronted by the younger Toguro brother, who he thought he killed in the last game, but it turns out he was only using 20% of his power, and to look cool he powers up to 60% and explodes a wall with his cool guy muscles. Toguro then proceeds to let Yusuke know that if he doesn't enter the Dark Tournament, he'll kill him and everyone he knows.
I'm gonna kill you, Yusuke, and then I'm gonna kill your mom, and then I'm gonna kill your girlfriend, and then I'm gonna kill Kuwabara, and then I'm gonna kill Kuwabara's cat.
Hey, Kichi! Please don't hurt her. I'll do anything you want me to do.
Once they're done chatting, Yusuke decides to finish his training with Genkai, and we start this game's tutorial. There's not too much to talk about here besides one key gameplay feature. So usually in games in this genre, the turn order goes from your team getting to take their actions, then to the enemy team to take theirs. This game mixes it up a bit by having the turn order be determined by a character's initiative, which in this case just refers to speed. Every move also has an initiative cost. The higher the number, the longer that character needs to wait before taking another action. It's a neat way to keep things lively with enemies being able to take their actions alongside your characters. This also means if you have someone run off alone and do a big attack, they're probably gonna die while they're unable to move afterwards. Initiative also plays into some of the win conditions, like Pursuit, where you need to chase and kill an enemy before they escape, or this one where you have to touch a square within a certain amount of turns because of reasons? Anyway, after our little training arc, we start our journey to Hanging Neck Island. This is also where the game really starts taking creative liberties with the story, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because of course this game isn't going to be a one-to-one representation of the anime. It's a tactics game on the GBA, for crying out loud. But the game does handle its story pretty well in my opinion. Character interactions feel natural, like the devs really got the feel of their personalities down. We pick up with Yusuke on the boat having to fight in a battle royale, but I don't think you can really call it that if there's only one other person, because that would just be a regular fight, right? Afterwards, we're dropped off on the island and begin our trek to the arena, but not before picking up Kuwabara and the rest of the main squad along the way. The game is broken up into a few areas that contain a few stages each, with the last stage being a tournament fight against the main participants of the Dark Tournament. You'll generally get to recruit at least one member from the enemy teams you face to be on yours as well, which is neat. A few of the characters you can recruit are Chu, Rinku, and even Yukina for some reason. I guess someone had to be the healer. Could have been Kurama though, I'm just saying. The music in this game isn't anything to write home about, however. It's pretty low-key the whole time and never really brought attention to itself. I can't even really complain about it. It wasn't memorable, but wasn't annoying either. It was just music for the sake of having at least something to listen to, and I can respect that. I went into this game thinking I was going to hate it like the last game, but I was very pleasantly surprised by what I experienced. The gameplay was very simple to understand, and leveling my characters to unlock new moves kept me invested. The enemies don't have a lot of variety between them, but they keep getting cycled out with new types as you progress to keep things interesting there as well. The game's challenge level felt just right, even in boss encounters. Had they been able to do more with the cutscenes or maybe an improved soundtrack, this could have been one of the better games on the GBA in my opinion. Back when I was a kid, I probably would have dropped it for a new Mario game or something, but I could easily see myself returning to it. So against all odds, I actually like this game, and I think it deserves a strong 3 out of 5. And had it done a bit more to set itself apart, it would have easily taken a 4. I see this game floating around $15 to $20 on eBay, and I think that's a great deal if you're a fan of Yu Yu Hakusho. We didn't get a lot of these games in English, so might as well scoop up one of the good ones, right?
What the? That guy's got horns. That's not normal.
Yu Yu Hakusho now continues.
The only other game that was released here in the US was Yu Yu Hakusho Dark Tournament for the PlayStation 2. This game was developed by Digital Fiction Games, who had only made a couple boxing games before this, and also some racing game on an old PDA that I only know about thanks to an LGR video. I honestly couldn't find out much information about this company at all, and with no games being developed by them in the last decade, along with their website linking to some Japanese stock page instead, I think it's safe to assume they're not around anymore. Regardless, this game was released on September 21st, 2004, and was the only traditional fighting game we got here for Yu Yu Hakusho. And well,
it's kinda trash.
Dark Tournament doesn't start off so bad though. The main menu even made me think I was about to play something competent, with music that catches the vibe of the anime perfectly. I mean, it's a shame they didn't get the license to the opening, but they did manage to have clips from the show playing on the side, so that's exciting. The game has a few different options to pick from the start, including, surprisingly enough, Dark Tournament mode, which contains the game's story, Skirmish mode, which is just versus mode, the classic fighting game arcade mode, the token game mode, which I'll get into later, and an unlockable survival mode. Dark Tournament mode takes you through an abridged version of the anime's Dark Tournament arc, with some characters and story elements being cut if they couldn't tie them into the game's fights in some way. The story itself relies almost entirely on shots from the show to progress the plot, which is pretty cool for that nostalgia factor, but otherwise I think it holds the game back by not allowing it to expand on the story that's already there, like in the tactics game. One of the first things you'll notice when you start playing, however, is just how sluggish the combat feels. Now, I'm no fighting game expert, but I've played my fair share of Soul Caliburs and Tekkens, and let me tell you, this game is slow. Every move feels like it takes an eternity to come out with how many startup frames there are, with some moves being flat out unusable because of how much time it takes to use them. The combo system also leaves a lot to be desired. Starting a combo isn't a problem at least, but with wonky hit detection and odd movement patterns, you'll probably end up off-center and missing, or gliding right through your opponent mid-combo. So that, combined with how unbalanced some of the characters are, makes extended play sessions feel extremely tedious, which means that fights usually boil down to finding that one combo you can exploit against everyone, or in the case of Dark Tournament mode, hoping your character has a good throw for ring outs. You can get through a good chunk of the game using that method, which is great if you just want to finish the story, but it won't work in all fights, and unfortunately this includes the final fight against Toguro. This version of Toguro is fucking insane, and one of the most broken characters I've ever seen. He can do 80% of your health bar just because you blinked wrong. He has some of the fastest move in the game, including an unblockable close range attack that also reflects projectiles, and his hitboxes are broken as hell. Did I mention you can't ring him out? Yeah, this fight fucking sucks. It's downright unfair how overpowered he is here, which I guess makes sense based on how strong he is in the anime, but holy shit, this isn't fun to play anymore. And what do you get for beating the game? Well, New Game Plus, of course. Dark Tournament Plus mode is irrelevant, and it should have just been this version from the start with how little they added. It's literally the same fights and everything, even to the point of having you redo the game's tutorials. But they threw in a few extra scenes where you get to play this weird token game. The scenes they chose for the intros to these sections are so random and forced, it's actually kind of funny. A couple of my favorites being the giant scary robot in the woods.
So, you guys want to play Yu-Gi-Oh?
And also Koenma betting his life on a fight and then playing cards so he doesn't have to anymore. The token game itself is pretty simple, with the main goal being to have more points than your opponent after both sides have placed all their tokens down. Each token has positive point values that add to your score and negative point values that subtract points from your enemy's tokens when they're placed next to them. It goes a bit more in depth with different card icons, but it's really just a small distraction from the main game, and I would have preferred it be left out if it had meant more time would have been put into the actual fighting mechanics. It actually sort of reminds me of those card games you play in Final Fantasy 8 and 9, except I actually liked playing those.
And I'd also like to give a quick shout out to Eerie from my Discord for not only supplying us with this gameplay, but also letting me know that I can play Triple Triad on Final Fantasy 14. Pretty cool.
There's also no penalty to losing. You just keep slapping tokens down until you inevitably win. It's not a challenge, it's literally just a waste of time. And that's everything this game has to offer. Getting to watch the anime scenes on my PS2 was pretty rad, but otherwise I really wasn't feeling it. This game has a decent level of difficulty, but a large portion of that was because of how the game plays. It has a really nice roster of characters, but after a couple of hours, the novelty of this being a Yu Yu Hakusho game wears off, and then it really starts to show its flaws. It'll be fun for a few rounds with a friend, but then it'll just leave you with this need to play a more complete fighting game. Overall, it's an okay fighting game, but not one I'm eager to play again. 2 out of 5 is the best I can do for this one, especially considering how much more fun I had playing games like Dragon Ball Z Budokai and the Naruto Clash of Ninja games.
I'm not really surprised that these games were that good, but I thought I'd take a look at them anyway because I like the anime so much. With my favorite of the trio being the tactics game on the GBA, but I can see why some people would like the PS2 game as well. But at the end of the day, none of these games have Kuwabara's cat Aokiji in them, so they're going in the trash.
It was the only way it could end. You did it! What are you talking about? We all did it. I couldn't have beaten Tagoro or the rest of them without your help.